All right, welcome everyone as we are back to our second daf in our Motzei Shabbos marathon. What do you want to ask?
Can you explain it again? The Karvel Hadid versus the Karki?
In other words, if they would have been next to each other in the Torah.
Physically.
Right, physically next to each other. Yeah. Now, we are now starting our second round of our Motzei Shabbos marathon, as we are on Daf Mem Vov, Amud Aleph, 7 lines from the top. 7 lines from the top. Ho'ish toilin, a man we hang with his face facing out, a woman with her face facing inward, while the second opinion is that we hang a man, we don't hang a woman at all. My time at Rabbanan, Amakrov is Salisa Oso, we hang him, Oso velo Osa. We hang him, but not her. Rebbe Eliezer, Oisai b'lo ksusai, it means him without his clothing. Says Gemara, well, the Rabbanan also dash in that to tell you only him, his birthday suit, and not with his clothing. Rabbanan einachanami. El Amakra, the Rabbanan learn out a different source that we hang him and not her. V'chiyiyah be'ish chet. Now that's extra word ish. Ish v'lo isha. Rebbe Eliezer, hi v'chiyiyah be'ish my darish be. What does he do with ish? He says we hang a woman too. So what does he do with ish? Oh, that's coming to exclude the Ben Sarah Umayra, that after doing him, we don't hang him. Says the Gemara, I Vatanya Ben Sarah Umayra niskal v'nitla. The Ben Sarah Umayra is stoned and is hung. Divrei Rebbe Eliezer. So you see that he holds that he is. Ela Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak l'Rabbis Ben Sarah Umayra. It's coming to include the Ben Sarah Umayra that he is hung. Now, why do we need to include it? My timer. The Amar Krav v'chiyiyah be'ish chet. So now ish implies a fully grown adult. Ish v'loy ben. That would imply not a ben. But then it says chet. Mish al chetoy nereg. Only one that's killed for his sin now. Now remember, the Ben Sarah Umayra is not killed for what he did now. He only stole and drank wine and ate meat. He's killed because of later, because he's then going to become a highway robbery man and steal and be Mechal Shabbos. Misha al chetay nereg, Yotze Ben Sarah Umayra shal shum seifei nereg. He's killed for what he's going to do later on. Oh, so that's 2 miyat. Having miyat achar miyat, that's a miyat after a miyat. Ve'ein miyat achar miyat el rabbis to include that we also hang a Ben Sarah Umayra. Amalan Rebbe Eliezer, V'aloi Shimon ben Rebbe Eliezer says, how could you say you don't hang women? V'aloi Shimon ben Shetach Tola Noshim, he hung 80 witches in Ashkelon. Amar Rav Chisda, so we learned that normally the court will not execute more than one person on the same day. They won't convict more than one person on the same day. That's only if it's 2 deaths. But if it's both same type of death, done it. Says the Gemara, well then, what was the question about Shimon ben Shetach? They were all sorceresses, and their punishment is all with skila. It was all sorceresses. And yet you said that normally they ain't done it, that you don't do them more than one in the same day. If something was said, it was said as follows. That's only that we do the only time we don't do 2 executions on the same day is even if it's a misa achas, if it's the same execution, but ke'ein shtei misas, because it's for two different sins. So if it's for two different sins, we won't do them both on the same day, even if it is the same execution. But if it's the same punishment and the same sin, done it. So the Gemara says here, by the sorceresses, they were misa achas, but they did different sins. In other words, there's different type of sorceries. There's oiv, there's yedayni, there's different types of necromancy. So that's why normally we would not do them on the same day. This was a hirashah that we did it on the same day. So the Gemara pursues this. Masir Ravada Barava ain't done in Shnayim b'yom echad. We don't judge two on the same day. Va'afilu b'noyei v'noy efes, even if it's the adulterer and the adulteress. Now there, it's the same execution, and the same execution chenek, and the same sin. They're both adultery. So why can't we do them at the same day? Tirgam Rav Chisda b'bas kayin ubayala. It's talking about a bas kayin. Now, bas kayin that commits adultery is sreifa, while the one who sleeps with her is chenek. So that's why we can't judge them both on the same day. Oy b'bas kayin v'zayme zaymemeha. The din is that a bas kayin, she gets sreifa for her adultery. Now, what happened is witnesses came and testified about her. Then other witnesses said that they were zaymemin, and a third set of witnesses said that that witness that said that the first witnesses were zaymemin, they are zaymemin. So the second pair of witnesses would get not shreifa, they would get chenek. So therefore, this they can't judge both on the same day, because one gets shreifa and one gets chenek. Now,
from
what?
Switched from shreifa to chenek by the second zaymemin.
You mean, why did we need three?
The first zaymemin gets shreifa like the bas kayin, right?
So that's...
The second ones don't. Why?
Yeah, it's not so simple. It's mashma from a previous mission I had that even the first zaymimim only get chenek.
That's what I thought also.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that. Why it has to go to two?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it has to go to two. I'm not sure. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Aimer, Shamati, Shebezdin Makin v'Inshin Shaloi min HaTorah. I heard that Bezdin could give lashes or other punishments not according to the strict letter of the law, but rather as a Hira Shah. This is in light of the discussion about Hira Shah, v'loi laver al divrei Torah, not to go against the words of the Torah, ele kidei lasa syog la Torah. In order to make a fence for the Torah, they felt that we needed a deterrent in the case. Somebody rode a horse on Shabbos in the days of Yavanim. Now, the issur of riding the horse is only an issur d'Rabbanan because you might pull a branch off from a tree. And they brought him to Bezdin and they stoned him. Not because he deserved this. It was such a widespread lack of Kvod Kedusha Shabbos that they, took extra action. A man went ahead and had marital relations out in the open under a fig tree. They revealed the Bezdin v'hilku, and they brought him to Bezdin and they flogged him. I mean, he slept with his wife. It was a time of immodesty, and therefore they did it to enforce more modesty. Now, new Mishnah, Mem Vav Amin Aleph. What a way to spend a Motzei Shabbos. What a way to start a Motzei Shabbos. Keitzad Toilen Oisai. How do we suspend him from the tree or from the air? Mishaken es hakayra ba'aretz. They sink a beam into the earth. Va'etz yaitza, and then another beam comes out, making like an L, upside down L. Or makiv shtei yadav zu al gavzu. They fold his two hands, one on the other, and they tie the hands to this projecting beam. The Sailai say. Rabbi Yaisi says that they don't sink a beam in the ground, but rather akayra muta ala kaisel. They lean a beam on the wall, and the Sailai say, and they hang him from that diagonal beam, kederach shatabach and isim, like the butchers do with meat. The imlon, if they leave him overnight hanging, over alav b'loy saseh, they transgress a negative commandment. Shenema loy solin nivlasei ala aretz. You should not leave his corpse. Loy solin nivlasei ala eitz. You should not leave overnight his corpse on the wood. Ki covers sikparenu. You should surely bury him. Kelemer, however, ki killas elikim toli, because Ki killas elikim, one who cursed Hashem, it was hung, and therefore it causes a curse to Hashem. It causes a shame to the Rebbeinu Shalom. K'leimer mipnei ma'azet toli. Why did this person get hung? Mipnei shebirech es Hashem, because he cursed Hashem. And so ki killas elikim toli, and therefore it causes a disgrace to Hashem. V'nimsa shem shemayim mischala. Now the Gemara says another pshat in killas. Killas is a contraction of kal less. It's not light. In other words, it's heavy. When a man is being put to death, what does the Shechina say? Kolni miraishi, I'm heavy in my head. Kolni mizrei, I'm heavy on my hand. In other words, it's hard for the Rebbeinu Shalom. So we don't leave it out overnight. It's hard for the Rebbeinu Shalom. If Hashem is aggrieved and in pain for the wicked blood that's spilled, kal v'chaimer, with all of these soldiers getting killed, how much Hashem is distressed with all of this terrible suffering of the righteous. Not only is it not allowed to leave an executed man overnight, but if a person dies, he should be buried that day. They shouldn't wait overnight unless it's for the honor of the deceased. Anybody that keeps a dead person overnight, however, if you keep it overnight for his honor, because the next day you'll have a much bigger levaya, or relatives will be able to come from out of state, or to bring him a coffin or shrouds, then there's no transgression. Now the executed man, they didn't bury him in the family plot. Bezin had two different cemeteries, one for the lesser executions of beheading and choking, and one for the more severe executions of stoning and burning. Now they're not there forever in these cemeteries. After the body decomposes, they could exhume the bones, and bury them in their family plot. Now, the relatives are make sure to show that they hold no grudge against the judges and the witnesses. They ask and inquire about the welfare of the judges and the witnesses. We don't have any tinus on you. You did the letter of the law. The relatives would not do public mourning. They would not sit shiva. They would not do public mourning for those that are executed in order that it should be a kapara for them. But they could personally in their hearts grieve. That's done privately in the heart, and that is okay. 2 lines from the top of Daf Ben Vav on the base. It's actually wonderful to see so many people here. Yeah.
We learned before that they had to be at Hasral, and within a minute they had to commit the crime, and then a Beis Din that kills
Right, right.
And here we have 2 Beis Din, one for this colony and one for the...
It was designated. It doesn't mean it was used.
So we shouldn't take from this that there was...
No.
This is still...
No, and it could be a 400-year Beis Din cemetery. This could be from a long time. It could be a 700-year cemetery. Now, Tanu Rabbanan, Ilu Nemar Chet Vis, if it would say Chet Visalisa, he sins and he's hung, Hayisi Aimer, I would say Toilin Isai, we hang him, and then V'achakach Mamisin Isai, and then afterwards, first we hang him to shame him while he's alive, and then we put him to death, like the Roman government did. They hung people and then they executed them. We execute him first and with stoning, and then we hang him. We wait until right before sunset. We convict him. And we execute him while it's yet day. We hang him, but remember we don't want to have him overnight. Echad kosher, one ties him up, the echad mater, and they immediately take him down, just kedei l'kayim mitzvahs tliyah, in order to fulfill the mitzvah of hanging him up. Tanu Rabbanan, 8. We hang him on wood. I might think that this is whether it's detached from the ground, a piece of wood, or it's a tree. Cover. We bury him. That's only if it's lacking hanging and burial. If it would be attached to the ground, just 1 second. We bury the wood together with the mace, at least within his tfisa, within his 4 amas. So, since it says cover, it means that you bury, and there's nothing in between. There doesn't have to be also detaching it from the ground. If it was attached to the ground, then it would have to be cut down and buried. That you don't do. Rabbi Yossi Aimer, he says you don't even sink it into the ground, because it's only something that's lacking burial. You would have to pull it out of the ground and bury it. Just pulling it out of the ground is not considered an action as long as you're not cutting it down. Kaloimer, mipnei mazet toli. It says the pasuk kikilas elikim toli. Mipnei mazet toli, mipnei shabirach Hashem, because he cursed Hashem. Tanya, we don't want him hanging there because that would be a chil Hashem. Tanya, Amar Reb Meir, Mashlu mashal lama davar daima. Because remember that when we hang a person, that person is a tzelem elikim. So the Gemara, so Rameya said a mashal, you know what this is similar to? Lishnei achim tu'umim be'ir. To two brothers who are twins, identical twins. Be'ir achas. Echad bino melech, one was appointed as a king, ve'echad yatsa l'listiyos, and one was a dastardly bandit. Tziva melech v'talu. The king commanded that his brother, when he was caught, should be hung. Kol harayos, so whoever saw him hanging, said that the king is hanging. I'm a melech tali. So therefore, Tziva melech v'ridu. The melech said, take him down. So here also a man is a tzelem elikim, shouldn't be hanging. The king said, take him down. As we welcome in Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg for our 30th Zoomer of the evening, Amar Meir, my mashma, how does kikillas elikim toli mean that Hashem says, I feel heavy when the person is suffering? So Amar Abai, Commander Amar kal les. Kilulas is a contraction of kal les. It's not light, it's heavy. Amalei Rava, im kain, if so, then it should simply say that the Rebbeinu Shalom says, my head feels heavy. Covered alai raishi, covered alai zrai mibayle. If the pasuk says kales, I'm not light, so it should say my head is heavy, my hand is heavy. Ela Amar Rava, Commander Amar Killi Alma. The world is light. Now the world is light is a euphemism for saying that it's heavy on me. And therefore, since the pasuk says a lashon of light, so therefore it also uses the lashon of kalni raishi, kalni zray, my head is light, but it really means heavy. Says the Gemara, haime boile legufei. That's needed for itself, that we hang the person that commits blasphemy. Imke name akra mikalel, my kilulas. So it's a lashon of light. Ve'ema kule la'achiyuda. So maybe it's only coming to tell me that Hashem feels light. So in other words, heavy. Imke name akra kalas with one lamed. My kilulas, the second lamed, also tells us that we hang only the one that commits blasphemy or only one that's chayiv skila, like the one that commits blasphemy. Shmamina tarte. V'loi zu bilvad. Now the Gemara discusses about the lav of leaving a person who is a person that dies, leaving him overnight. Rabbi Yochanan Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of the great Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Stam Reb Shimon in Shas is Reb Shimon ben Yochai. It says that he's mentioned 2,000 times in the Talmud. And since it's 2,711 blat, you get an idea of how much Reb Shimon is mentioned in Shas. So I'm Rabbi Yochanan Mishim Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Minayin lemolin es meisai. How do we know that if you leave over the dead, she'over alav b'lo yisasei, that you over alav? Talmud Leimer ki kover tik berenu. You should surely bury him. Mikan lemolin es meisai, that if you leave over the dead, she'over b'lo yisasei. Now, of course, everybody asks, well, that's not a lav, that's an asay. Kover tik berenu is an asay. How do you know that you're over alav? Because right before it says, Loi sullen, you should not leave it overnight. And then it says, cover tik berenu, so you're over a lav and an asay. Ikid amrei. Amr Yochanan Mishim Reb Shimon ben Yochai. How do we know that you bury a person? We all know that we bury a person in the ground. How do we know that you bury a person in the ground? Remez l'kfura min ha-Torah minayin. Talmud Leimer ki kovar tik berenu. We surely bury him. Mikan remes l'kfurim in Torah. That's a remes for burial in the Torah. Amalei Shavar Malka Rav Chama. Shavar Malka said to Rav Chama, Kfurim in Torah minayin. How do we know burial from the Torah? Ishtik v'lei amalei v'lei midei. Rav Chama didn't give an answer. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov imser alma biyadad tipshai. The world has been given over to fools. The Ibayalei, he should have said to him, the Ibayalei l'meimer ki cover. So Rav Chama learns ki cover could simply mean delavad le oren, that you should make a coffin. Who says it means you put him in the ground? Tikbarenu. So he said le mashmalei. He didn't think that Shavar Malka would accept the double lashon as a proof. The name midi ikbar tzadike. Why do we say that the raya is from the fact that the righteous were buried in the ground, right? Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were all buried in the Maris Machpelah. No, that we might say is minhag b'alma. It was just a local custom. What about the fact that Hashem buried Moshe Rabbeinu? Midikavre HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Well, that could simply be the Leilishtani Miminaga, not to change from the custom. Tajma, the Saftu Loi Kol Yisrael, and all of Yisrael eulogize Yeravam's son Aviyah, the Kavru Isai. So again, the Gemara says the Leilishtani Miminaga. However, says the Gemara, but it says Lo Yispadu V'Lo Yikparu L'Daimen Al Pnei Adama Yiyud Anshe Anosis. They shouldn't be buried, they shouldn't be eulogized, they should be left like the dung on the earth. That just means the lishtani miminaga. Maybe it means that they should change from the local custom. So the Gemara doesn't give us an easy time for the source of burial. Ibaylahu. Kfura mishum bizyainahu. Do we bury a person to save the person from disgrace, that people shouldn't see the body rotting? Ay mishum kaparo, or is it an atonement? Lowering the body into the ground, is that an atonement? It's one of the most hardest things for the family to see is their relative being lowered in the ground. Maybe it's a kapara. L'may nafkamina. The Amar where he says loy ba'ina delikbaru. He says, I don't want you to bury me. If it's because of the disgrace, so then nafko kamine. You can't do that because it causes his relatives disgrace. If he amrit mishum kapara, maybe he could say, I don't want the kapara. Ha'amalei ba'ina kapara. My. Tajma midi ikbar tzadike. They buried the tzadikim. V'yamrit mishum kapara. And if it's because of kapara, the tzadikim need kapara. Tzadike the kapara tzriche. Do the righteous need kapara? It says yeah, everybody needs kapara. The chsiv the main tzadik ba'aretz. There's no righteous person asher yaset tov v'lo yechate that does good and doesn't sin. Everybody needs kapara. Tajma v'saftu like kol Yisrael. The kavru I say, and they buried Aviyah. The amrit kiyechi detavile kapara, that should be for an atonement. Then they should have buried Yeravam's other sons too, even though they were wicked. Hanach nami likparu kiyechi detavelu kapara. Says the Gemara, well, hi de tzadiku tehavele kapara. Aviyah, who was righteous, let him have a kapara. Hanach, the other sons of Yeravim that were wicked, loyla avelu kapara. They shouldn't have a kapara. Tajma lo yispedu v'lo yikperu. We don't bury them, the anshe anosas. We don't eulogize. The loyta avelu kapara. That could be that they shouldn't have kapara. Says the Gemara, ibaylu hesped. You know, it's interesting. Hesped, the eulogy is the same letters as hefsid, loss. Because the idea of the eulogy is to depict to the people that are listening the loss suffered by this person dying. So hespeda yakar dechayabe, is it for the honor of the living to talk about their relative, and it gives them nechama? Oh, yakar deshachveyabe, or is it for the honor of the dead? L'may nafkamina. Dama loitis bedula gavra. He left the tzavah that you shouldn't eulogize him. Inami lafuke miyoshim, to take the money away from the ocean. So if it's for his honor, he could say, I don't want it. But he can't say, I don't want it if it's for the honor of the living. On the other hand, if it's for the honor of the living, the ocean could decide not to pay for it. But if it's for the honor of the dead, they can't take away that honor from the dead. Tojma, Vayavai Avram lispaid l'Sara v'livkaisa. Avram came to eulogize Sarah and to cry over her. V'i amrit mishum yakar dechayehu. If it's because of the honor of the living, is it right to hold Sarah out of the ground and in Bezayin because of Avram's honor? Mishum Yakud Avram Mashul Sarah, we delay burying the righteous Sarah. Says, well, yeah, that's what Sarah would want. Sarah would want her righteous husband to get honor. Sarah Gufa Nechale, Avram, that Avram should get honor. Tajma, the Saftu like Kol Yisrael, the Kavru, I say. They eulogized him and they buried him. That's Aviyah. V'yamrit mishum yakar dechayehu, the other brothers of Yeravim, if it's for their honor, b'nei yakrininu, are they worthy of honor? Says the Gemara, well, nichalu l'tzadikaya, Aviyah, who is a righteous, is still pleased in miyakribu inche, that people should get honor through him. Tajma, lo yizbedu v'lo yikveru. They shouldn't be buried, they shouldn't be eulogized, they shouldn't be buried. But if it's for Yakar Dechaye, why shouldn't Aviyah, who is righteous, get an honor through them? It's not pleasing for the righteous to get honor through the wicked. We'll stop over here. Remember, throughout the week, the shir is at 8 o'clock. And we are going to do now the Mishnah Yomis.